Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracarya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Ganganapataye Namaha. Om Sri Radha Krishnaya Namaha. Om Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for coming and for waiting for a little delayed start in class. And thank you also, welcome also to those who watch the classes online remotely later. As we've been doing, we'll just review the verses that we have learned so far, as you can listen and repeat, and make sure to read the translation as I'm chanting. Vedo nityam taduditam karma svanushthiyatam teneshasya vidhiyatam apachitif kamye matis tyajyatam apachitif kamye matis papaughah paridhuyatam bhavasukhe dosho nusandhiyatam atmechāvyavasīyatam nijagruhaturnam vinirgamyatam. And after every verse we were saying just the ladders, the rungs of the ladder that verse has helped us climb. Sangasatsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dhrudhadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksharamardhyatam Shruti-shiro vakyam samakarnyatam. That is verse 2, which mainly focuses on satsanga and the importance of seva to a guru. Vakyarthascha vicharyatam. Vakyarthascha vicharyatam. Shruti shiraf pakshas samashriyatam. Shruti shiraf pakshas samashriyatam. Dustarkat suviramyatam. Dustarkat suviramyatam. Shruti matastarko nusandhiyatam. Shruti matastarko nusandhiyatam. Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam. Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam. Aharahar garvaf parityajyatam. Aharahar garvaf parityajyatam. Deheham matirujyatam. Deheham matirujyatam. Buddha-janairvadaf parityajyatam. Buddha-janairvadaf parityajyatam. So this verse 3 was mainly talking about the three important spiritual practices in Vedanta: Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Kshudvyadhischa chikitsyatam. Kshudvyadhischa chikitsyatam. Pratidinam bhikshaushadham bhujyatam. Pratidinam bhikshaushadham bhujyatam. Swadvannam natu yachyatam. Swadvannam natu yachyatam. Vidhivashat praptena santushyatam. Vidhivashat praptena santushyatam. Shitoshnadi vishahyatam. Shitoshnadi vishahyatam. Natu vritha vakyam samucharyatam. Natu vritha vakyam samucharyatam. Audasinyam abhipsyatam. Audasinyam abhipsyatam. Janakrupa naishturyam utsrijyatam. Janakrupa naishturyam utsrijyatam. So that's where we stopped last class, and this verse 4 talks about the lifestyle, how we should live our lives as we continue our practice of Nididhyasana, as we continue this climb up the ladder. And the bottommost rung of the ladder, Shuddhyadhischa chikitsyatam, treat the disease of hunger, take food as medicine for removing this disease, pratidinam bhiksha aushadham bhujyatam, swadu annam natu yachyatam. This is a tough one for all of us. Do not crave tasty food. Where am I? Vidhivashat praptena santushyatam. Be content with whatever food you are given. Of course, this applies to those who are not doing the cooking. If you're doing the cooking, then you're probably going to cook things that you like or that your family likes. You're not going to make something nobody likes. Shita ushna adi vishayyatam. Learn to tolerate some discomfort like cold, heat, etc. Natu vritha vakyam samucharyatam. This is another difficult one for most of us. Do not engage, do not na samucharyatam, do not utter, do not speak when it's not needed. Do not talk uselessly. Do not talk without a reason, really. Audasinyam abhipsyatam. Audasinyam, cultivate neutrality or indifference towards worldly matters. And janakrupa naishturyam utsrijyatam. Naishturyam, harshness or cruelty. So ignore the harshness of others. Harshness be included kindness. Basically, do not base your self-worth on what other people think about you or say to you or say about you. And then this is the last verse of this short text, and this is one of Swamiji's favorite verses. He told me that. I think he's mentioned that in a class too. Ekante sukhamasyatam. ekante sukhamasyatam paratare chetas samadhiyatam paratare chetas samadhiyatam Purnatma susamikshyatam Purnatma susamikshyatam Jagadidam tadbadhitam drisyatam Jagadidam tadbadhitam drisyatam Prakarma pravilapyatam Prakarma pravilapyatam Chitibalanapyuttaraishlishyataam Chitibalanapyuttaraishlishyataam Prarabdham tviha bhujyataam Prarabdham tviha bhujyataam Atha parabrahmatmana sthiyatam Atha parabrahmatmana sthiyatam. So the previous verse spoke about supportive sadhanas to make our mind poised, or focused on the ultimate reality, on the primary sadhana, which is primary sadhanas, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, but last verse specifically spoke about Nididhyasana, how to dwell on the teachings, not the last verse, the verse before. And the last verse spoke about how to conduct our life as we continue our practice. So this verse gives instruction for the quote-unquote completion of sadhana. When is sadhana completed? When can sadhana be completed? And the first half of the verse discusses the final process of nididhyasana. Ekante sukham asyatam. Sukham asyatam. Asyatam, be seated. Sukham has many meanings. Here it just means comfortably. Be seated comfortably. And where? Ekante. By yourself. Eka anta, where there is no beyond, that one. Sit in solitude or in a secluded place. So this sukham asyatam, the sitting comfortably, not only means your seat needs, this is for nididhyasana, right? So not only do you need to be comfortable in whatever chair or floor, wherever you're sitting, but it also implies maturity. Maturity to be with yourself. Maturity to not be alone or lonely or feel afraid. When you are in deep meditation, who is with you? You're pretty much on your own. So it can be a little daunting. It can give rise to a little bit of fear that there is when you're in deep meditation. Most of us, I don't think, get to that stage at all. But if you do get to the stage, so this comfortable means being okay with yourself. And where do you need to go to sit comfortably? You don't need to go anywhere. You can just pick a chair in your home, a comfortable chair in the comfort, safety of your home. Of course, preferably not in the family room or a room where you have a TV going on or there's activity going on. And where do you need to sit to be in solitude? Pretty much in your own home. There was a student who went to Swami Chinmayananda-ji. There's a narration about him. And the student was in a camp, I guess. The student was an elderly student wearing hearing aids. And he went to Swami Chinmayananda-ji and he complained that people are talking so loudly all the time. They're just not... when you go to camps, for many people for most people, it's a great opportunity to be immersed in a camp, meaning a spiritual camp, a retreat like they have at Arsha Vidya. For most people, it's a great opportunity to get away from your busy, normal lives, to be immersed in the teachings, to be by yourself, to be completely focused in those teachings. But for some people, it's an opportunity to get away from their lives and then be involved in a social interaction. No judgment. Whatever reason you're going to a camp for is fine for you. So this person complains to Swami Chinmayananda-ji, and Swami Chinmayananda-ji just tells him, switch off your hearing aids. Where's the problem? So if your home is not quiet, if you're wearing hearing aids, obviously switch it off. But if you don't wear hearing aids, you can put on some headphones, noise-cancelling headphones, so that you can get this quietude in your comfortable chair in your own home. Some of you might have heard of this story. There is a guy who decides, a spiritual aspirant, who decides to go on a silent retreat. And the conditions of the silent retreat is that absolutely no talking, except at the end of 5 years. So this is a silent retreat for 5 years, and at the end of 5 years, you're allowed to talk, but only 2 words. Only 2 words. I don't know how I would survive there, but if some of you have done this vipassana camps, where I think you have 3 days, 10 days of absolute silence. So this guy enrolls in this retreat, and 5 years later, he comes to the abbot, the person conducting the retreat, and the abbot tells him 2 words. And this guy says, food cold. So he goes back to his room, continuing with the retreat. Now 10 years, another 5 years have passed, and he comes to the abbot, and the abbot reminds him 2 words. And this guy says, bed hard. He goes back again. 5 years now are over, 15 years total. He comes to the abbot. This time he comes with his bags packed. And the abbot reminds him 2 words, and he says, I quit. And the abbot sighs, shakes his head, and says, well, I'm not surprised. All you've done since you've gotten here is complain. With just those 2 words. So, sukham asyatam ekante, sit comfortably, be by yourself without complaining. Of course, most of us in this room are coming here for, know the value of meditation and being by yourself. But if you're not on the spiritual path, it can be a little challenging. So after you're seated comfortably, what do you do next? Not take out your cell phone and scroll. We saw that mudra last time. Paratare chetaha samadhiyatam. Samadhiyatam, let your focus or let your attention, fix or focus what? Chetaha, your mind or attention on what? Paratare. Paratara is, in Sanskrit grammar, it's for the superlative, like good, better, best. So paratare, on the greatest, on what is beyond the highest, what is the greatest, the ultimate reality or Brahman. So concentrate on the highest reality, Brahman, Para-Brahman. Now how to do this? Key to do this is, of course, Shravana and Manana. But the key also is to cultivate a practice of meditation. Make it a daily practice, daily habit. If Shravana and Manana have been done well, and what that means is when you are no longer listening in third person, there is Brahman, there is Atma, and you've switched that to listening in first person. Aham Brahma Asmi. I am Brahman. I am Atma. When this shift has happened, so this shift happens only when it is backed by knowledge, Shravana and Manana. When the shift has happened and you sit to meditate on the highest reality, you can learn to withdraw your attention from the world, withdrawing your attention from the world and go from being the witnessed object, from you being the witnessed object to the one doing the witnessing. This is a much deeper topic, which obviously we won't develop here. But the instruction is, if you haven't started meditating yet, start today. And then the question will come, how long will this take? How long will it take for me to Paratara cheta samadhiyatam, for me to focus on this ultimate reality. How long will it take? It depends on several factors, including your preparedness, your adhikaritvam. How much shravana manana have you done? How disciplined is your life? While you're sitting to meditate and your phone is not turned off, and every time the phone goes ding, your attention is drawn there, you're obviously not, your discipline, you need a little bit more discipline to be able to meditate. How many rungs of that ladder have you climbed? We are seeing the Sopana Pancakam. How many rungs of the ladder? So all of these come into play into how expertly or how adeptly you can sit to meditate and focus on Parabrahman. Purnatma susamikshatam. Susamikshatam, iksha, to see. So see well or discover, recognize what? Purna Atma. Recognize that Brahman is Purnam, Purna is fullness of Atma, which is you, of yourself. So Brahman is the ultimate, is the fullness of not only you, but everything in the world, everything we experience, we witness. So this Purnatma can be replaced by Sarvatma. So when you see that fullness not only in yourself, but in everyone and everything around you, that is what this line is telling to do. Any trace of vagueness with regards to yourself or your true nature is gone. What's left? You recognize that you, the individual, are not separate from this entire world, this entire everything you see from Brahman. So important to point out that this process of sadhana, this spiritual journey, is one of negation, one of removal. So when you're sitting to meditate on Param Brahma, what are you removing? If Shravana and Manana have happened adequately, what is being removed is your ignorance, is the ignorance that you're not Param Brahma. You do not become Satchidananda Atma, quote unquote, become. All we do through the spiritual journey is to remove the ignorance, remove the ignorance that we don't know our true nature. We don't know that we have always been Satchidananda Atma. And so in this process of spiritual growth, you gain nothing, quote unquote gain. If you think you're going to come out of meditation and become enlightened, that's going to last for how long? Probably not long. So the understanding is really what is key. You get rid of this ignorance, and getting rid of this ignorance is really important because you don't gain anything. But getting of this ignorance, remember several verses back when we began the text, we said we are all seeking happiness outside. We are all seeking permanent, lasting happiness outward in doing things, in gathering things, in accomplishing things. The reason we do that because we don't recognize that fullness, that lasting happiness that is already within us. So that's the ignorance we want to get rid of. That outward seeking is the cause for constant suffering, constant striving. So we've discovered this Purna Atma within us. Now what about the world? Jagad idam tat badhitam drishyata. Drishyata, may you see or recognize. Recognize what? Idam jagata, this world, is badhitam, is negated or sublated in what? In tat. Tat here is a pronoun that stands for Tat Brahman, is negated in Tat Brahman. So as long as you see the world different from you, there's always going to be duality. There's always going to be a sense of competition, a sense of struggle. I have to do better, I have to gain more. So this line is saying, Tat badhitam Jagadidam tad baditam drishyatam. May you see or may you recognize, may you negate the entire world, badhitam, jagadidam, this entire world in the vision of Tat, in the vision of Brahman. How to do this? By understanding that this entire world is not an independent reality. This entire world is only name and form, nama rupa. It depends on Brahman for its existence. It depends on Sat. Just like when you see a clay pot, when you see a clay pot and know that it is nothing but clay, the name pot and the form is just name and form, nama rupa, but the existence of this pot depends on the underlying clay. So just as when you understand that one consciousness pervades the entire universe, it's not separate from the countless, endless names and forms we see in this world, this entire world. When you see that one Brahman, just as you see clay as the underlying reality of pot, just as we are able to see Brahman as the underlying reality for everything that exists, the entire universe is reduced to name and form, nama rupa, including this body and mind. So this negation, so for this negation, do you have to remove the pot to know that it is clay? You can be looking at the pot right now and know that it's made of clay. Do we have to remove, quote unquote, the universe to know that it is not real? No. When you understand, when you negate the universe, when you understand that the universe is not as real, that's the word that Vedanta often uses, is mithya, it's not as real as you, Brahman, Satyam, then you don't have to, you can continue to live in the world knowing that it exists, but it exists at a lower order of reality. You don't need to remove the world. You know, some people have this notion that to be spiritual, I have to give up everything. I have to quit my job, I have to give up my family, I have to go and sit in a cave in the Himalayas. I should not have any likes, dislikes. I should not, I should negate everything that I should not, I should give up everything. And that's really not what this line is saying. This line is saying, the world, when you understand that the world is not real as you, continue to live in the world, continue to experience the world, knowing that you are the underlying cause of the world. When you get this, you are a jivan muktaha, a person who is liberated while alive, and you're free from suffering. So initially, when we are doing nididhyasana, this takes a lot of effort because we really have to bring the teachings to bear as we are contemplating. But after a long length of time, this vision that Brahman, there is nothing separate from Brahman, this vision becomes almost spontaneously. So for example, do you have to keep on reminding yourself, I am human, I am human, I am human? Will you forget that you're human if you stop reminding yourself? No. It's a spontaneous knowledge that comes up. So in the same way, aham brahma asmi, I am Brahman, also becomes spontaneous and becomes firm, established when you have, over a period of time, when sufficient shravana, manana, and nididhyasana are done. Once the spontaneity comes, we've seen in the last verse, we can give up shravana and manana when you have converted your understanding from third person to first person. You can give up shravana. You can give up manana when you don't have any questions anymore, or when you have a question, the answer automatically comes up. And that's something I've seen over years. When somebody asks a question, I already have a sense of what the answer is going to be. Not that I'm great or anything, it's just that over practice, over a considerable period of time, over decades. So when the spontaneity comes up, that aham brahma asmi, that automatically comes up spontaneously, even nididhyasana can be dropped. Because all you're seeing as a Jivan Mukta, you have the vision of Aham Brahma Asmi. And the final half of the verse and this text discusses this avastha, this condition of a Jivan Mukta, a person who is enlightened while alive. Assume you are enlightened. All of us are alive. Assume we are all enlightened. Especially as we're coming to the end of the text, what to do next? So when your sadhana is complete, when you no longer suffer, is there a need for shravana, manana, and nididhyasana? No. So this half of the verse is preparation for the next part of our life, preparation for death. How will a Jivan Muktaha, an enlightened person, prepare for death? I'll give you a spoiler alert with the answer. A Jivan Muktaha knows that he or she is not suffering while he or she is alive. And at the time of death, that continues, that non-suffering, I should say at the time of death and before death as well, because death can raise a lot of fear in a lot of people. So that knowledge continues, and all that happens is the Jivan Muktaha becomes a Videha Muktaha. Jivan Muktaha, somebody who is enlightened while living with a body. Videha Muktaha continues to be enlightened without a body, Videha. So to understand this half of the verse, the law of karma is first briefly explained, discussed, and I'm not going to go into a whole depth of the law of karma. There are, Swami-ji has a set of videos called The Doctrine of Karma, which he explains it very elaborately and very nicely. And always in satsang, there are questions connected to the law of karma, on this karma and free will. If you haven't quite understood it, I would highly, highly recommend go back and listen to see his videos. To begin, this law of karma and the doctrine of karma and free will is a belief system. In this context of the law of karma, the word karma means karma phala. Karma means action, but in this context it means karma phala, the results of action. The results of action can be punyam meaning results that bring favorable conditions to our life, or it can be papam, results that cause undesirable situations in our lives. And this is going to be very brief overview of the types of karma. We have 3 types of karma. Sanchita karma, which is the infinite number of karmas that we've accumulated over infinite prior births. Then you have prarabdha karma. From this infinite amount of sanchita karma that we've gotten, a small portion of, I shouldn't say small, for some it's small, for some it can be big, a portion of this karma fructifies into this life as prarabdha karma. So that portion that is responsible for our present life, what kind of body we have, male, female, how our minds are, whether we are born healthy or sick, whether we are born into a rich family or poor family. All this is because of this prarabdha karma that is responsible for this life. And in this life, we continue to do karmas. We are not sitting or just laying on our bed doing nothing. We are continuing to act. We are continuing to do more karmas as we are continuing to exhaust our prarabdha. So as we do more karmas, these karmas will accumulate, will result in future results, and this future fresh karmas is called agami karmas. So some of these karmas may fructify in this lifetime itself. What if we die and some of the karmas have not gotten their results as yet? that karma pool goes and joins the sanchita. This is a very, very brief explanation, only because this half of the verse talks about this. So when some sanchita, so that karma that is not fructified in this life goes and joins the sanchita, and what happens? Some sanchita is waiting to be fructified as prarabdha, the next birth. And then punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. This cycle of life, birth, death, suffering keeps on going. But what happens for a jivan mukta? I began with saying, let's presume we are all jivan muktas, we are all enlightened while living. It says, prak karma pravilapyatam. Pravilapyatam, they dissolve. What dissolves? Prak karmas. Prak meaning before. So the karmas that were collected before, that is the sanchita karma, which is accumulated from infinite prior lives. So the question should come, how does this infinite karma that we've collected dissolve for a jivan muktaha? So that a jivan mukta doesn't get reborn, an enlightened person doesn't get reborn. How do we get rid of an infinite accumulation of karmas? In this limited lifetime, there is no way to get rid of an infinite karmas. You cannot exhaust them individually. But what we can do is exhaust or get rid of the notion of the doer of the karma. What I mean by that is, who does the karma? Does your body do karma? No, the body is just a machine. Does your mind do karma? No, the mind is also just like a machine. An Atma cannot do any karma. So who does the karma? Who is the willful doer of the karma? And we saw that in last class. When I say I do, when I think I gave the example when you hit someone and you say I hit somebody, who is that I referring to? And we saw last time that I refers to the ahankara or the ego, which is a fictitious doer of the action. So for a jivan muktaha, prak karma pravilapyatam. This, when a jivan muktaha recognizes that he or she is not the karta, the doer of an action, the sanchita karma is just dissolved, just goes away. But this comes through knowledge, obviously. So with knowledge, you recognize that karmas no longer have an agent, that you are no longer an agent of the karma. So this example came to mind. If you are sleeping and you are dreaming in your sleep, you're dreaming that you committed a crime. And just as you are about to be put in jail, you wake up. Now, when you wake up, will you get put in jail? No, because the crime is dissolved. Crime is no longer committed by you, the waker. So in the same way, when you are enlightened, when you are a jivan mukta, you are no longer the doer of any karma. So the sanchita karmas are dissolved. Chiti balat api uttaraihi shlishyatam. Chiti balat. Chiti here means knowledge or knowledge. Balat, through the strength of knowledge or through firm knowledge. Na shlishyatam. You don't get tainted or affected by what? Api, even by uttaraihi. Uttara means later. Uttaraihi means by future karmas. By later future karmas that you're committing in this lifetime. So you don't accumulate fresh punyam and papam as we continue to do actions here. How would a jivan mukta, presume we are all jivan muktas, not be engaged in any actions? How is that possible? Does he or she not sleep, eat, talk? So there seems to be a contradiction here. But this line is saying, with the strength of knowledge, a jivan mukta knows he or she is pure consciousness. And as pure consciousness, he or she does not do anything. So the future karmas, the agami karmas, are also dissolved with this knowledge. What about prarabdha karmas? So we took care of sanchita, we got rid of the future agami karmas, but the prarabdha karmas, we are a jivan muktaha. Let's say all of us we still have this body, we still have our lifespan to live out. So prarabdham tu iha bhujyatam. Bhujyatam, let it be consumed or exhausted. Let what? Prarabdham. Prarabdha karma, prarabdham short form for prarabdha, let the prarabdha karma be experienced or enjoyed tu iha. Those two words are important. Tu iha, iha means here in this lifetime, but it also means in this body. So a jivan muktaha knows that he or she is not a karta, does not accumulate any new karmas, agami karmas. He is not the sanchita, the accumulated karmas are also knocked off. But this life and this body continues. So imagine if you realize right now you're a jivan mukta and your prarabdha is exhausted. What will happen? We'll all be knocking off dead. We're all going to be prarabdha. When your prarabdha is exhausted, you die. So what keeps the jivan mukta going or breathing is this prarabdha, a small portion of sanchita that not only is responsible for this body, mind, for the condition, but is also responsible for lifespan. How many years each of us has to live? Which is why I said, I corrected myself earlier when I spoke about sanchita. Some of us have a long sanchita. There are people, I think, 107, 116 years, and some have very short prarabdha karmas. They're born with, sometimes you hear, unfortunately, of babies not even being born. They're dying in the womb. So that is really determined by the prarabdha. So just because you are a jivan mukta doesn't mean your prarabdha will end right when you recognize that. Your prarabdha continues, which means you'll continue to have pleasurable situations and painful situations in this lifetime itself. But for a jivan mukta, there is suffering will not be there because this knowledge has given a change in vision. A change in vision to recognize that I am Brahman. I am not this body and mind. So this verse is saying, Bhujyatam prarabdham tu iha bhujyatam. Let the remainder of the Jivan Mukta's prarabdha, let it run its course. Let it unfold as it is meant to unfold. So with knowledge, prarabdha karmas are exhausted. So up to this is Jivan Mukti, this third line. The last line of this verse talks about Videha Mukti, freedom without a body, liberation at death. So what is being lost at the moment of death? Atha prapara brahmatmana sthiyatam. Atha, then or thereafter. That means thereafter means whereafter, after prarabdha is exhausted, for a jivan muktaha. Sthiyatam, let him or let her remain. Remain how? Para brahma atmana. As one whose atma is para brahman, is non-separate from Brahman. So when alive, a jivan muktaha through shravana, manana, nididhyasana knows that he or she is not separate from, that knows that he or she is Sat Chit Ananda Atma, not separate from Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman. We've heard these words, they are the same. Sat Chit Ananda, referring to the individual Atma, Satyam Jnanam Anantam, referring to Parabrahman at a collective level. So at death, what changes for a Jivan Mukta? or for all of us, the body decays, the mind and body senses cease to function. What happens to Atma? Satchit Ananda Atma remains as is. So if you take an example of a pot space, were there two different, there is space inside the pot and there is space outside the pot. Are there really two different spaces? So when the pot is present, there is one space. When the pot breaks, what changes? Nothing changes, nothing happens to space. The space continues to remain as space. What is removed is the nama rupa, the name and form of this thing, which was causing an apparent division in space. So for a Jivan Muktaha, when the body is around, the name and form, the anatma name and form of this body is present, along with consciousness, Atma. And at death, what happens? This body, mind, nama, rupa, name, form is gone. Atma continues as is. So nothing really changes at the time of death for an enlightened person. And the Jivan Mukta remains utterly non-separate from Brahman at death. This is Videha Mukti. This is the final culmination of this text of Sadhana Pancakam. And as we've seen in other verses, we'll look at the ladder that we are climbing up in this last verse. So, ekante sukham asyatam, be seated comfortably by yourself. Paratare chetas samadhiyatam, focus your attention or fix your mind on Param Brahma, the ultimate reality. Purnatma susamikshatam, discover your fullness, discover your true nature as Brahman. Jagad idam tad badhitam drishyatam. In that knowledge, in that recognition, the world is negated in Brahman. Prak karma pravilapyatam. For a Jivan Mukta, for an enlightened person, the prak karma, the past karmas are dissolved. Chitti balat na api uttaraihi shlishyatam. With knowledge, you are no longer doing, you're no longer the doer of future karmas. Prarabdham tu iha bhujyatam. With knowledge, your prarabdha karmas are just getting exhausted, as in keeping with your prarabdha. Atha parabrahmatmana sthiyatam. And at death, continue to remain utterly non-separate from Brahman. So that is the last verse of this text. And I know some of us have a fear of heights, so climbing up that ladder, we are on the 40th rung. At that 40th rung, the knowledge that we're getting from the Sadhana Pancakam is saying, you are completely, utterly non-separate from Brahman. There is no division. So if you have that knowledge, what is there to be afraid of? Whether on that top rung of that ladder, or at the time of death, or at the time of any suffering that we go through. So, this text is a very short text, and it's really a nice, it gives a very, as I said in the beginning, it's very useful sadhanas, disciplines for us to reach this ultimate recognition at the time of death. So I would suggest continue to use this text of sadhanas to climb up that ladder daily, and until you reach that highest rung. I'm not telling you we should die but you can continue. At death, this knowledge will take us through. Not only at death, but many people, we don't know how our death is going to be, right? Our suffering before death could be prolonged, it could be instantaneous. Whatever form our death takes, we have no idea. But if we immerse ourselves in this sadhana Pancakam, in these 39, the 40th is really not a practice, it's a result of what happens when you practice these 39 sadhanas. It will not only make us jivan muktahas, free us from suffering while we are alive, but it can continue to help us face challenging situations before death, at death, whatever the situation is going to be. So some closing remarks. Firstly, thank you all for indulging me in taking up this text, and thank you to the people who watch online. It's a short text, profound text, Sadhana Pancakam, packed with a punch. It's a good text to memorize because it's a short text, just 5 verses. And I remember Swami-ji told me that this was part of their routine memorization when they were doing the 3-year course. And I'm sure many of you are going to be wondering, what is the next text what is next for us sitting in this room? The next for us is we're going to have a summer break. So we are not going to be, usually we do take a summer break. So from next Saturday on, we will meet only at 11 o'clock for Swamiji's class. This time slot will continue once I know which text we're going to be taking. So with that, we will end with our closing prayers. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, ma amrutangamaya. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari